What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kenahan, and today I'm bringing you an episode right after the Washington Commanders' 23-19 victory over the Dallas Cowboys in the final regular season game of the year. It was at AT&T Stadium, Week 18 showdown between two division rivals. Washington, heading into this game, had some sort of stakes on the line in terms of seeding in the playoffs, but were already in the playoffs because of the win last week against Atlanta. The sixth seed, though, was on the line before this game. Washington win or a Packers loss would mean Washington would get the sixth seed and avoid the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round of the playoffs. Both of those results did happen, but it happened with a lot more drama throughout the entire 3.5 game stretch of the early window. The Packers were playing the Bears. The Bears, in the final seconds, score a last second field goal, maybe probably 10 seconds before Washington, and Marcus Mariota throws a touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin in the closing seconds of Washington's game. So both did happen, but it was really stressful towards the end for Washington fans if they were going to get the sixth seed or the seventh seed. But at the end of the day, Washington will go to the playoffs as a sixth seed. Green Bay will be the seventh seed. Washington will either play at the Rams or at Tampa Bay. Again, by the time this episode comes out, we'll know who Washington will be playing and when they'll be playing. But I'm recording this in the middle of the Rams-Seahawks game right now. Seattle currently leads 7-3, so we're not entirely sure what's going to happen there. But, of course, the Rams win would mean Washington would play the Rams, and a Rams loss would mean Washington would play Tampa. But I just kind of want to more so get into the game itself because, I mean, beyond clinching the sixth seed, well, Washington finished the season 12-5. It was a big time, not only game, but kind of stretch for Washington down the stretch of the entire season. You had to win some pretty key games in terms to stay in the playoff race and then to improve their seeding throughout this week and, of course, last week as well against Atlanta in a crucial game the week prior as well against Philadelphia. So it was a big time stretch, and Washington goes on to win 5 straight before heading into the playoffs. It was a massive stretch after losing 3 in a row in the middle of the season. So big time stuff from Washington the first 12-5 season for the Commanders since 1991. So let's just jump right into the game against the Dallas Cowboys. It was definitely something to watch. The first half, or the majority of it, was pretty boring. Let's be honest. Offensively, it was pretty stagnant for majority of it. Jaden in the first half did not look right. He was under pressure a ton right off the stretch. Micah Parsons 2 sacks in the first 3 plays for the Dallas Cowboys, and it felt like, oh, Jaden's just going to be under pressure the entire game, and like you're just hoping he doesn't get hurt, which he kind of sort of did. Dan Quinn after the game saying he took Jane Daniels out at halftime because of a leg soreness injury. Doesn't think it will affect him moving forward, but it was more precautionary to make sure he is ready to go next week in a much more important game against whoever it may be in the wild card round. So Jane Daniels, of course, if you watch the game, he left at halftime. Marcus Mariota came in for the second half. Jane said after as well, if it was an important game and he had to go, he would play. He would go out there, and we're not going to be able to take him off the field. So it does not sound like it was a major injury, but it's more precautionary for Jane Daniels for QB1. So he did not look right in that first half, though. I'm assuming the injury probably happened early on in the game when he was under a lot of pressure early because he was taking some pretty big hits in the backfield. Offensive line was not giving him really that much time in the pocket, and we'll talk about the receivers in a little bit, but wasn't much for Jaden kind of downfield either. So in total for this Washington offense, less than 23 minutes of possession, and Washington ends up winning this game 23-19. So that's massive for this Washington team. The majority of it, Washington was trailing. Did not expect Washington to win this game, especially once Jane exited with his injury and then Marcus Mariota came in. But Mariota kind of turned it around in the second half. He gave this offense a spark. Back-to-back touchdown drives to start the third quarter. Mariota was getting the ball out on time. He was getting the ball out quickly. It looked very smooth with Marcus Mariota, and it felt more right. I'm not saying, of course, quarterback controversy in Washington. Is Mariota better than Jane Daniels? I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it definitely seemed like something was off with Jane today, which, I mean, it happens. He was injured, it sounds like, for majority of that first half, and he was playing injured. But in that second half, Mariota came in, looked a lot more healthy, got the ball moving downfield, and multiple touchdown drives, including throwing Terry McLaurin, who the game-winning touchdown with under 10 seconds left. McLaurin breaks the franchise record for most receiving touchdowns in the season. It was spectacular to watch. Mariota was able to keep the offense cool, calm, and collected, and led 3 touchdown drives in that second half after Washington only could put up 3 points in the first. So an 8-play 72, sorry, two 8-play 70-yard drives from Mariota and an 11-play 91-yard drive as well. I mean, it was great stuff from Marcus Mariota, who had to come in. They probably talked with him at halftime, told him, "Hey, Jane's not really ready to be able to go." But Mariota comes in 15 of 18, 161 yards, 2 touchdowns, 141.0 passer rating, near perfect. He only took 2 sacks. When Jane in his first half was 6 of 12 for 38 yards and took 4 sacks, a passer rating of 56.9. So you could tell something wasn't right with Jane. I'm not worried about it moving forward. Just probably a good precautionary for Dan Quinn to take him out. And then, Marcus Mariota came in and helped save Washington the 6th seed and made them kind of avoid Philly in the first round, which seemed pretty important to Dan Quinn during the week during his pregame press conferences. So he loved what I saw from Mariota. Let's talk about the run game a little bit. Mariota, 5 carries for 56 yards, was easily the leading rusher for Washington. He had the touchdown. Majority of that yards came on a crucial 33-yard run from Mariota on one of the final drives. Let me find it. Let me find it. Yeah, basically Mariota, crucial third conversion on that 33-yard run, and was able to kind of keep Washington's drive alive and ultimately help them win the game in the closing seconds. So it's always good to beat the rival, especially a team that Washington should have beaten earlier this year but wasn't able to. In terms of the rest, though, in the run game, Jane Daniels, 4 carries for 27 yards, had a 16-yard carry, so pretty much nothing really there. Austin Eckler, 3 carries for 12, and Brian Robinson, 5 carries for 10. So the running backs combined 8 carries for 28 yards, or 22 yards. Sorry, 8 carries for 22 yards. Not good, not good. Um, for for Washington in this one, but also at the same time they had less than 23 minutes of possession total in this one. So we'll get into how the defense kind of affected the situation there, but not really anything going from Austin Eckler or Brian Robinson. Eckler, of course, coming off that concussion that he suffered. And many people believed, oh, was this it for Austin Eckler? Because that was the second concussion this season. It looked very bad, but I mean, comes back and hopefully this is kind of just more of a warm up before he's ready to go full strength next week against whoever may be in that wild card round. So the running game didn't get going, even though if you look at the stats, 18 carries for 113 yards and a touchdown, averaging 6.3 yards per carry. It's kind of not exactly tells the whole story there, but yeah. So the run game was kind of iffy. The receiving game and the passing game, Mariota again for 161, and then Jay Daniels for 38 yards. Terry, 8 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown. It was a big game from Terry. He really got more involved in the offense as the game progressed. In that first half, he had, I believe, 1 catch total. But then when Marcus Mariota was able to come in, Mariota got Terry more involved, and ultimately he finished with 8 catches on 12 targets for 62 yards, a touchdown, the game-winning touchdown, where he caught a 50-50 fade ball over a Cowboys cornerback. So great stuff from Terry. Olamide Zaccheaus, 2 catches for 51 yards for him. Zach Ertz, 5 for 44 and a touchdown. Austin Eckler, 2 catches for 20. De'Ami Brown had 3 catches for 16 yards. I want to mention Cliff Kingsbury brought out some of his trick plays in this one. A play where it's kind of like a reverse almost to De'Ami Brown, but Brown kind of stops and he looks downfield and he threw a pass to a wide open Olamide Zaccheaus in the end zone. Zaccheaus could not track the ball and haul it in. That was kind of a major theme in this one, especially in that first 3 quarters or so. These receivers, I could not tell you how many drops there were in this game. It was probably at least 6 or 7, but for these receivers, it did not look good for a majority of this game, from a receiving standpoint, which does not build any confidence, in my opinion, moving forward into next week against whoever we play in the wild card round. So that is my thoughts on Washington's offense. Let's flip the ball over to Washington's defense, though. a team, a unit, sorry, that was solid for the most part, but really was kind of lucky in some ways. Many open opportunities for Trey Lance, who was the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys in this one. Lance, I mean, he didn't look incredible. He definitely took some bad sacks, but I mean, there were some open opportunities for Lance and a couple of bad sacks, but there were some open opportunities for Lance. And I mean, if you look at these offensive numbers from Dallas, 228 yards through the air, 150 yards on the ground, outgained Washington, outpossessed Washington. Like, I mean, 378 total yards to Washington's 269, 23 first downs to Washington's 18. Dallas didn't have a single turnover in this one. Washington had one on special teams, and Dallas possessed the ball for over 37 minutes. You'd think the Dallas Cowboys win this game. Ultimately, though, they cannot convert in the red zone. This defense was able to hold up to multiple stands in the red zone in this one, and it was crucial because it kept Washington in the game, and it kept the door open for Washington to come back and win behind Marcus Mariota at quarterback. So 150 yards on the ground. The run game for Dallas was very good. It was very good once more against a unit that's been one of the worst rushing units in the entire league this season. That issue and that weakness still continues. I want to talk about some of the guys up front on that defensive four. Um, Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. I mean, you guys have seen. I haven't really talked much about them since their contract extensions, but look, guys. I mean, since they've gotten the contract extensions, they have not been able to perform up to the numbers on those contracts. And I mean, at the time, they deserved those numbers on the contracts. They were played up to those. It's not like Washington really overpaid for either of those guys because they deserved those numbers. But now, since that time, I mean, I mean, like we just have not gotten that fire and that explosiveness. I feel like, and those big plays that we used to see out of these front two, for Washington in quite some time. Jonathan Allen got his first sack today in 2.5 months. I know as a defensive tackle, you're more of a run stopper, get your hands up when passes are thrown, but I mean, like these guys got to get some pass rush going at some point. These guys are bottom on the team and pressures, and compared to these edge rushers. But yeah, I want to see more pass rush stuff out of these guys, out of these front two, because the amount of money Washington is paying them and the lack of production that Washington is getting out of them leads me to believe that maybe one of those two guys will be gone and traded this offseason, especially with how much draft capital Washington spent on Johnny Newton. So that is where I stand there with those guys. But yeah, so moving on, the lack of sacks overall, I think, with this front seven, only 2 sacks today, and this defense not being able to create any turnovers, 0 turnovers today. It's been a common theme throughout these last few games. I know you had the one pick, Quan Martin pick on Michael Penix, and you had some other turnovers, but this team has got to consistently at least get one turnover. Um, and that's not been able to happen so far this season. So it's it's not been great for Washington. And defensively in terms of creating turnovers, I hope that's something that Washington is able to improve on next season, especially with more talent potentially coming in that secondary and some of the lack of talent leaving this offseason. Let's just say that. So as these younger guys like Mikey Sanders still get older, we'll see what happens with Jeremy Chin. I don't expect Benjamin St. Juste to be back. Marshawn Lattimore when he's healthy. I mean, turnovers should be able to come at a higher rate next season. I'm hoping so because I mean Dan Quinn's defenses are known for creating a ton of turnovers, but this season we've seen an increase in turnovers, but maybe not to the increase that we were hoping of seeing this season. So that is kind of the lack of turnovers and where I stand at that point. Uh, the secondary overall can't really hold up long without Marshawn Lattimore multiple times when I mean the Benjamin St. Juste pass interference you could say was like an iffy call, but still, I mean you're gonna put some of these guys in bad scenarios. Mikey Sanders still today was amazing, amazing for this team. I think 3 or 4 pass breakups in this game for Mike Sanders still, but still, uh, I mean Mikey is still gonna be put in some bad scenarios and bad situations where he's just not getting any help. So um, next season, hopefully, when Sanders still is pushed back inside, it's better. But I mean, still a pretty amazing day from him, especially with him playing out of position. Michael Davis was out there kind of struggling. Benjamin St. Juice, of course, struggling out there. But I mean, there's definitely some improvements that need to be made within this secondary. But yeah, it's not entirely it's not entirely there. I don't know if it's good enough. I don't really think it's good enough to make a deep run in the playoffs. But yeah, if there's one side of the ball that kind of makes this team and hurts this team in the playoffs and doesn't get this team to where they want to be in the playoffs, it's definitely this defensive side of the ball, which is kind of ironic because your head coach is a former defensive coordinator and is known for his defense, but also just with how bad and just the lack of talent on this defense that Dan Quinn kind of inherited. It's been great to see the improvements that have been made over the last few months and couple of months, few weeks, you could say, that this defense has gone back to kind of just slightly below average. And in some metrics, they are about average now. But for most of it, especially the run defense, it's still bottom three, bottom two in the league. And you cannot win a playoff game with how that defense has been playing. So a couple turnovers in a playoff game would be huge for them. And I think if this defense gets a couple of turnovers next week, Washington wins, no matter who they play. So that is my thoughts on the defense and kind of the lack of play from the defense in the last few or so weeks. Now, again, Dallas only put up 19 points in this one, but there's just so many scenarios where Trey Lance has this open guy, missed an open touchdown, underthrew a guy for a touchdown on a third and goal. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios where it's kind of iffy for this defense. So that's been the big weakness, and that's why I'm not entirely sold on this Washington team being able to make a run and win a playoff game or two. But still, it's been an incredible season at 12-5 in the regular season. So I kind of want to switch over to the playoffs and my thoughts on how far Washington can go, plus the final thoughts of these games here. I expected Washington to win this game, but I expected Washington to win by double digits. It was kind of embarrassing in that first half, being down for the majority of this game, pretty much all the way up until about 6 seconds left. This team was down, so I mean it was embarrassing, but this team was able to rally and the offense was able to deliver time and time again, which we've seen. But in terms of how far this team can go in the playoffs, I think the ceiling is probably one win is what I would say. That's probably the ceiling, and the floor, of course, is out in the first round. But mostly just because this defense has been so just lackadaisical, really, and especially the front four has not been able to generate a lot of pressure on veteran quarterbacks, especially potential veteran quarterbacks who you may be going up against, like Matthew Stafford or some other guys behind better offensive lines. I don't know how much pressure Washington will be able to get on some of these veteran quarterbacks. But a guy like Baker Mayfield, who Seattle is up 14-3 right now, so maybe it will be Tampa Bay. I think Washington will have a better chance at a team like Tampa Bay. I would rather choose as the Rams actually score a touchdown. So back and forth they go. But if I had to make a decision, I would rather play the Buccaneers and hopefully Baker makes some mistakes. Baker's top three right now in interceptions in this league. So I think you have a better chance of Baker making mistakes than Matthew Stafford in the playoffs making mistakes. So we'll see what that ends up with. We'll know by now by the time this episode comes out. But yeah, that'll wrap things up pretty much for this one. The next episode will be out on Friday, previewing Washington's wild card game, the first wild card preview in this podcast history, actually. So that'll be pretty fun. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, that'll pretty much wrap this one up. So that'll do it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. Washington finishing the season 12-5. And let me just say before actually we wrap this up, this team has been super fun to watch. Probably my favorite. I mean, for a lot of people, actually, their favorite Washington team in their lives, really. Washington's 12-5 record, something that I did not see coming going into this year. I had Washington as a 5-6 win team, and I'm happily to be wrong about that because the Commanders are in the playoffs. They've given me, I'm not only excited about this playoff run, but I'm more so excited about the future years that we have. We have a quarterback for the first time, Jaden Daniels. We have a head coach that seems to be confident. We have an owner that is actually like paying attention to the team and not like messing around. So like we have, in my opinion, one of the best GMs in the league right now. So there's a lot to be excited about for this offseason as well as the future years for this Washington team. So not only this playoff run, I mean, this by far exceeds my expectations of where this team would be at this time of year. But it's been fun to watch, and I'm excited to see how far this team can go because hey, all you have to do is get in. All you have to do is get in, and then you don't know what could happen from there. So that'll do it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.